Hello, this is Brian Largent with the ArcLight Group, and this is part 2 of our series about securing against physical attacks, such as the wireless keylogger that we talked about in our previous video. Just to recap real quick, this wireless keylogger can be used to record keystrokes. Let me change my camera angle a little bit. It can be used to record keystrokes from a keyboard, and keystrokes is anything you type into a keyboard. So you plug it into the keyboard's USB port, or if it's a wireless keyboard, just plug the adapter into it. And you then just plug that into a computer. So now, anytime anyone types on that keyboard, it's going to record those keystrokes, and the person who put it there can access that recording from anywhere within about 30 feet of the network. Now, there may even be a way to connect this to an internal guest network and access it from even farther away. I haven't dove into that to see, don't really care, it's not pertinent for what we're doing, but if you're smart and you want to figure out something really clever, maybe make that work. So don't do that. So that's what this does. This allows people to plug this in to any computer between a keyboard and the computer and record all the keystrokes. So why are keystrokes important? Well, keystrokes are how you put in your password. If you're a doctor, maybe put in chart notes, anything like that. So a malicious attacker, or someone maybe even from a country that wants to do harm, just wreak havoc in our country, could easily put one of these in, say go to a hospital, a private practice that has computers in their rooms where the patients are unattended, which we see quite a bit in my own family when we go to doctor's offices. Since I'm versed on HIPAA compliance, that always unnerves me a little bit when I walk into a medical practice and there's a computer on the wall and it's logged in. Just all day, logged in. I understand that a lot of IT pros think that they can secure an environment solid enough that it can be logged in and someone can't do something. Well, I don't agree. So that's a story for another day, and we can have that debate in the comments if anyone would like to do that. So anyway, so this wireless keylogger can record things. If you have a computer that's undetected, someone could easily go to your practice or into the hospital, into that room where it's not being monitored, and they could plug this between the keyboard or the wireless keyboard adapter and the computer and record all the keystrokes. And since it's wireless, anyone with a mobile phone or an iPad or an Android tablet, you can get an Android tablet for I think $80 these days, can just walk by on wireless, detect this, connect to it, as long as they know what IP to plug in. In the case for this one, it was 192.168.1.4. And you plug that into your browser on your tablet. On mine, I did it on a phone. And I was able to get the web page with all the recordings from all the keystrokes and all the passwords that were entered. Now, there's a couple of ways to thwart this. The most effective, in my opinion, is physical, where you actually block ports so that these devices can't be plugged in, and you lock things into those ports so that they can't be taken out and this plugged in between the keyboard and the computer. That's my favorite. We're going to go into that the most, but the other way is at least to block people from being able to get passwords is to use multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is where you log into your computer, say, using a password. So you got your login and you got your password, and then you have a second factor of authentication. Oftentimes, it's like using Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, where it will ding your phone and you can approve to log in, or you have to go to your phone and get a 6-digit code that expires every 30 seconds or so, and you plug that code in and then you can log in. Now that works because that second factor changes every time you log in. So if you have that enabled, at least people can't get your passwords, but they can still get a lot of other information. Again, like I said, chart notes, financial information, ACH transactions. If they put it into a financial person's computer, there's a lot of damage they can do there. And they can access it wirelessly. When I tested about 30 feet away through 2 walls and a glass door. So you can get to it from outside your office more than likely, and if not outside your office, probably walking down the hall near your office and get this information. So it's really a scary little tool that you might want to try to protect against. So now that we've played with that, we wanted to figure out what do we do to block it. Talked about multi-factor authentication. Now we're going to talk about the physical safeguards that we can put in place. I'm going to change camera angles so I can get kind of a side view so you can see all the devices and how they work. Okay, so I've got my little computer here I'm using for an example. So I've got a switch and a computer. We're gonna do the computer first. So the first thing you'll notice is I've got these USB ports here, and one's got a little red thing in it, and the other one doesn't. So I'm gonna take that out. Probably should have taken it out before I did this video, but I forgot to. So I'm going to take that out. All right. So the first device we're going to talk about is the USB port locker. That is these. So I'm going to read to you how the keys and the port lockers work from an email that was sent to me by Blake Weichert with the Connectivity Center, which is the people I bought these from. And I did a video and it had some inaccuracies in it and some questions. So I'm actually deleting that video. I'm going to send this one out because it's more accurate. Usually I try to do all my videos with just one go with as little editing as possible. But this time I wanted to make sure I'm not doing anything to damage another company's reputation. And some of the things that I thought of this product early on was inaccurate. And so I'm going to clear that up now. I'm just going to read what Blake wrote. The professional keys, and they have professional and enterprise, the professional keys are not all the same pattern. So, okay, this is the key. Let me get that off. This is the key. So as you can see, it's got, it's not the clearest. It's got some patterns cut into the key, and they're not all the same. So we have an undisclosed number of professional key patterns so that even if someone else has a professional key, they cannot get into another customer's ports. This is why I compare the professional series key to a car or a house key. We can have the same car but have two different keys that won't open each other's doors. We assign a serial number and key pattern for each customer's location. The customer doesn't even know what pattern they are getting, only the serial numbers. Because the customers don't know what pattern they are receiving, it's nearly impossible for any customer to discover they have a compatible key with another location. And that's true. So if you had this USB port lock, it has no serial numbers on it. They're all red. All the professional series are red. The enterprise are tied color-coded to different locks. And so if you are a consumer, you can buy the color-coded ones. And your colored blue, let's say, is going to be able to lock blue USB port locks. Okay? So that's not real good for enterprise because it wouldn't be too hard to go online and to buy those. Or I say for IT services companies, but still, no one's really going to do that more than likely. So it is a little security by obscurity, but if you go with the professional line, which is a step up, it's only sold business to business. In other words, Joe Blow can't just go buy these. These are tied to your company. They have a serial name or serial number on the back with a holographic sticker, and so this is done very well, and it does do a good job of securing them. Now they have an undisclosed number of patterns. So I can't say whether there's any, what is the odds of someone unlocking your ports with their reader. I'm going to say that no one's going to try. Anyone trying to get into your system is probably going to try to drill these out or yank them out. And the good news about that is these things are in there pretty solid. So I'm going to go ahead and push one in. They go in there pretty well, and you can just push them in. But you got to have the lock to unlock them. So, okay, I've got that in there. I mean, that is not coming out. And I tried prying on it with a pocket knife and a flathead. It's not coming out. I was going to have to do damage to get it out. But you take your handy dandy key, you plug it in there, you slide it back all the way, and it pulls it out. And there it is. Works great, not hard to get in and out. Fantastic solution. Okay, now what do you do if you're trying to protect against people putting things in your USB ports if they just can unplug your keyboard and plug a wireless keylogger directly in and then plug it in? I mean, I got to have my ports open if I've got a physical cable, right? So what do? Well, the first thing you do is you block all the ports that you don't want to have any kind of access to at all. You don't want your employees plugging things into your ports. You don't want strangers being able to come in and plug things into your ports, so you do that. The next thing you do is you take your handy dandy cable and you take this device right here and you put it together. So I always do this upside down. Let's see, like that. Yep. And then that goes right there. Okay, and you put it together. And so this acts like just a pass-through right here, right? So it's just a pass-through, but it's got some locking features built in. So once you got it on there, you can then plug it into your USB port if you do it right side up. Okay? Now, that'll come right out. I haven't got it locked in yet. It's all loose. It's going to come right out. So let's get it in there, and then I'm going to flip this like that. Okay. So this is what I put in. This little thing sticking out is basically this port lock right here. It's get my hands in the right angle there. It's basically these port locks, okay? I'm gonna push that in. Now that ain't going nowhere. I would have to break some crap out of this thing to get that out. So that is really in there good. Now that being said, it is plastic. Someone could probably drill it out, mess with it, but hopefully you don't, number one, they don't have time to do it. Number two, they're gonna leave some kind of obvious proof, damage or whatever, that they tore up your computer, and then you know someone was jacking with things and you need to go and look at your systems, figure out who was the last person that saw it, who worked on it, blah, 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 okay? Gives you something to go on rather than just having someone be able to plug in, do something, and leave. Okay, so I'm gonna take this out. Now, most people are not using, just got that upside down. Most people are not using wired keyboards anymore. So how does this work with a wireless keyboard? I've got a little wireless dongle here. I'm going to try this. And so let me move the computer out of the way for now. So I've got my little dongle, and I'm going to try to make this work. So first thing I'm going to do is just plug it right in here. So I've got it in. Now this little thing here, so it has a little spot here where a little pin, or I don't know if you call it a pin, but a hook of sorts, pops up and it catches it right in here. You can see some ridges, and that's what keeps it from coming in and out easily once you put this on. So now I need to lock that in the best I can. Now I can't go all the way in. Oops, I got it upside down. I'm dumb. Okay, try this again. There we go. Now I can't go all the way into there to lock it because it doesn't give me enough room on the USB to get plugged in. So I have to kind of pick a nice little in-between pattern. And to do that, let's bring our computer over here. Okay. Man, I'm making this too hard on myself. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to plug this in all the way, and once that's in all the way, then I can hold down on it, latch it in, and that's not going anywhere. Okay, now let me flip it over. Okay, so you can see that there's some gap there between the plastic and the wireless keyboard mouse dongle there. I tried prying that out, wasn't coming out easily. I'd have to leave definitely have to leave some telltale signs that I'd tampered with it to do that. But I do wish they'd make one of these shorter. I'm sure they're making, I talked to the guys, they're making changes on these all the time, new versions. So I'm guessing they're going to have something to be able to lock that in here very soon without causing any grief there. A little easier. But that being said, this dongle's long enough that even if you could pry it out, you're not going to get it out easily. And again, it takes time and effort to do that. And most people are going to see something like this and go, I'm going to go look for another location to do harm. Make it hard for people to get into your system. That's the name of the game. Okay? So I'm going to undo this. Oops. Yep, that was right. Okay. So take that off. Let me get my wireless dongle out before I forget what I did with it. Oops, I didn't get that all the way off. Okay. Okay, plug that back in my computer before I forget. All right. Okay. So that is how you can lock down all your USB ports. You put your little plugs in all of the different ports that you don't want. You lock down the dongle that you want to use, and you're good to go. So not the hardest thing in the world to do. Works really good. There's some other things that they've got with security keys, different types of locks. They've got locks for pretty much every kind of port you can imagine. See, that is the SmartKeeper DB25 serial port lock, DVI port lock, USB Type-C port lock, DB9 serial port lock, SD port lock. You can lock your SD. This is a LAN cable lock, and that's that same USB port. Okay, so the next thing is this device here. So if you lock this in to the computer using this, you lock it in to where it can't come out in the computer, then you can lock a whole bunch of cables into this device. It's got a little USB hub, and you can lock a bunch of cables into this device and then have another form of security. And the way this works is you get all your cables in there the way you want, you put a USB locking piece in there, you put one on the other side, and it is now locked, and those cables can't come out of this device. So another neat way to handle it. If you're using a USB, wireless USB cable, you could lock this in, and then you could take your oddly shaped Microsoft wireless dongle that won't work with that because it's too long, and you put it inside here and it's going to work just fine, and it's secured. Okay? So they've covered pretty much all the bases on USB locking that you'd really need. So the next thing is locking down Ethernet ports. So you've got a switch, it's in a demarcation point that is accessible by other people. We see this quite a bit where you'll have a demarcation point in a medical plaza, and you'll have 20, 30 different medical clients, and usually there's attorneys mixed in there for some reason. And they'll have a closet, and everyone will have their network switching in there. I assume this is because the facilities just wanted the IT or the internet service provider to give them one place to put everything, and everyone just went in there and put all their switching in those closets and ran it over to their offices. And if they didn't do that, they often just put their cable modem in there, ran it to a firewall, and from the firewall they ran over to their office, and then they had their switching in their office. Well, the problem is open Ethernet ports are still a threat. So you can lock your Ethernet ports down using virtual means or software, where you can say only certain MAC addresses can get into these ports. You can turn those ports off. There's different things you can do to secure this, and you should. But if you have the option to do a physical security, it's definitely worth giving it a go. I personally would rather do physical security and some light, not so complex port security. Maybe turn those ports off you don't need, but combine the two, as much security as possible. But do it in such a way that the least common denominator understands that the environment is secure and how to unsecure it if they need to do something. What I like about these is I could have someone who's maybe not the most network savvy person in the world doing an audit for me on a client site, and he could go out there, and if he sees the switches have open ports without plugs in them, he knows they're not secured. So he knows to go and secure those when he's doing his audit. I really like that. Okay, so obviously you don't want to put these little locks, and it uses the same backup. It uses the same unlock tool. If it's red and it's got the right serial number, and these all came serialized for this device, it will unlock them, okay? So you don't want to put these little port blockers in all these ports just because they're open. You can use a bulk tool like this to lock those down. That's one way to do it. You can block them all with these except the ones you want to use. But then you have a problem because someone can just take a network cable. So they'll say this network cable is plugged in. And all of your ports are blocked using one of the SmartKeeper port lock tools or Ethernet port lock tools. Okay, so all the person has to do is unplug this one and then plug in whatever they want to plug in, or they go to the other end of this cable and they just unplug it out of the server or computer or whatever it might be, and they can get into your switch, right? Well, they have a neat little tool, and this was one that I didn't know existed that really impressed me. So this is the tool, and this allows you to lock your cables into the ports. So what you do is you see this little tab. Let me get that little tab on a network cable, these little patch cables. It goes in to this little device here, comes all the way through, and then once it's through, it hooks in the plastic, so that can't come off easily. Well, if you do it right. I didn't do it right, obviously. There we go. There we go. And then it's hooked in there, okay? And so the way this works now is I can plug this in to a port. Now, I haven't locked it yet. As you saw before, all of these things have what looks like the same little USB port locker. I love that they're the same, look the same at least. Now, these are integrated. They don't come out. And I can now push that in just by my finger right there. Actually, push a little harder than that. And if I did my job right, okay. So now, this little black button up here came all the way up, which means it's fully locked. It's also flush with the device. And I can't pull that out. There's no tab to push down, the tab I was talking about here. No tab to push down to release it. Because if you don't push down on those tabs, these are locked in, right? So I can't pull it out. Can't push down the tab to pull it out. I'm going to do some damage to get that out. Now I could always cut the cable, put a patch cable on it, but again, that's time consuming. No one's probably going to do that unless there's major money on to be made from getting into a network. But that's a really good way to lock that in. Now you do the same thing on the other end, going into your server, another switch, whatever other devices on the other end of this. If it's in a shared location, you can do it on both ends. Now that works really good, and if I want to take it out, same process as before. If I can happen to do this from an odd angle, I can't see what I'm doing. Oh, I had it upside down. Okay. Okay. So plug it in, pull it down. It's all the way out. And now I can push down that little button and it comes right off. First time I did this, I struggled with how to get these things back off, and I just wasn't patient enough was what it came down to. It's really not hard to do at all. But again, if you have a bunch of cables you want to plug in, this would go on there, and it takes the same USB port locks on them to lock them in, so you'd have one on each, and you could lock a whole block of cables into your switch and not have to use little port blockers on all of them, right? So it works really well. Okay, so that's really all I've got. I don't have anything else to go over. I'm really impressed with these products. I'm going to be using them within all my clients' infrastructure, at least the infrastructure that could be in a colo space, specifically at a hospital. I'm thinking of clients right now that could really benefit from this to keep anyone else from being able to plug in. We do use other security measures. Don't think just because you plug these in that you shouldn't also disable port access and do other security measures. But it's definitely a great physical security when you can do it. As far as USB security, yes, you can disable USB ports using group policy. There's other ways to disable them. But when you do that, you can run into some other problems on your network, because people do need to be able to plug things in. And it is nice to be able to go out there and just instantly pull a plug out, plug someone in, lock that in, and be secure. If you have any questions or concerns or want to learn more about these products, I recommend that you reach out to Blake Weichert. And again, Blake, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. I should have asked you. And I'm going to post his information on the end of this video, so you'll be able to give him a call and give him a holler. I really like these products. I think you guys could really benefit from using them to secure your environment, especially in those co-location spaces. Have a great rest of your week.